Well, today we're talking about food, glorious food.
There you go.
Sacrifice to idols.
Wow.
Yeah. You know what that's from, by the way?
No, I don't.
That tune?
No.
From Oliver.
Oliver. Oh, yeah.
He
You're right.
said, "Can I have some
There you
more?"
go. That's right. More porridge. So it's all about should I or shouldn't I? It's really about discerning.
It's cruel.
Should we do something or shouldn't we do something?
Yep.
Right? So that's what it's about. He's Chris. I'm Jeff, and we're the Bible guys. Chris.
Yes.
So in the old days, like a million years ago, back when we were doing the HC Daily podcast,
Yes.
I had mentioned how people just are enthralled by the mystery that is Chris Zarbaugh. And in the inevitable movie made of your life,
Yes.
I asked you, who would you like to play Chris Zarbaugh
Right.
in the inevitable movie that's going to be made
Yeah.
of your life? So today we thought we'd expand on that idea. I want to ask you, who do you want to, because this is your opportunity to hit reset on that answer because it's haunted you.
Yes.
Who do you want to play Chris Zarbaugh? And then what genre would the movie of your life be?
Yes.
And then if the movie were to be filmed before you die, would you want to choose how it ends?
Before I give you my answer, because it is different than my first answer, I would like to go on record and say I regret nothing.
You regret nothing?
No.
Yeah.
My answer is still just as strong as it was before.
Who did you say first?
At first I said Zac Efron.
Zac Efron, because he's ripped.
It was only, no.
And he sings and dances.
Yeah, that's sort of all the combination of all the above. Because he's a good-looking dude, too.
Okay.
So you're the one that gave me grief.
Yeah, I know.
And then it translated into everybody giving me grief. However, this has more context. So it's not only who would you like to play you in a movie, but what genre.
What genre.
And then how do you want the movie to end?
That's right.
So it brings my mind somewhere else. So, I mean, there's absolutely don't regret this answer. Don't even have to think about it.
Okay.
Number one, Tom Cruise.
Wow. Yeah.
And I want it to be an action thriller.
Action thriller.
And if it's because this is supposed to be my life, if the movie were filmed before you died, how would you want to choose how it ends? Do you remember not too long ago, just literally a few weeks ago, how the Powerball, the Mega Millions, whatever it was, how it had $1.9 billion,
right.
And a single person, a single ticket, won all $1.9 billion.
It finished over 2. It was 2 something.
Was it over 2?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In California.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's how I'd want my movie to end.
That you win the Powerball?
Well, or like a rich uncle dies, you know, and somebody comes. But either way, my legacy changes dramatically, and I'm thrown into the world of like multi-billionaire.
Okay. So you want to be Tom Cruise, or you want Tom Cruise to play you?
Oh,
and it's a
I got to tell you,
action movie.
He is probably my favorite actor.
Okay.
He does all his own stunts.
Yeah.
Every single movie.
Well, you do all your own stunts too, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, whatever stunts those are. Getting up out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, walking down the stairs.
Yeah, exactly.
But in almost everything he's in, I love, absolutely love. And so, yeah.
So like Mission Impossible Tom Cruise or Maverick Tom Cruise?
Yes.
Or, either one.
Yes.
You want that? That's the movie of your life. Fighter jets and jumping out of helicopters and hunting down bad guys. That's the movie of your life.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Dude, just name anything he's in, and he's great.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, and he's in the favorite genre that I have is like an action thriller.
Oh wow.
It's like an action movie, but it's also has that thriller part to it.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I think so. I'm kind of split on this just a little bit, but I think I would go with John Krasinski.
Yeah, well, he's great.
Yeah, especially the Jack Ryan character that he plays.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's great. I love his sarcasm, his wit, all that kind of stuff. But he has an intensity when he's in the tough guy movies. He does a great job.
And he's known for being a genuine good guy.
Yeah, well, and I felt like that would translate well on the screen for me as well. So thank you for that.
And also the washboard abs. Yeah, I'm sure that would translate well too, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't have a 6-pack. I got a keg, but that's
kangaroo beer.
Yeah, there you go. That's right.
That's so funny.
I think I would want the genre to be like an adventure, like Indiana Jones or The Mummy type,
Yeah.
adventure thing.
Although I will go on record and say The Mummy starring Tom Cruise, the remake,
Yeah.
was horrific.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was
terrible.
The first one was way better.
Way better.
Way better, right?
So I guess not everything he's in I love.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah.
Good.
So adventure for
Yeah,
you.
adventure. And then
How would you want it
if
to
I
end?
chose it to end, is that I would just disappear in the jungle. That's how I want it to end.
That's how you want your life to end.
Yep.
You want your life to end in the perfect scenario. You want to disappear in the jungle.
Yep.
Why?
Have everybody just wonder what happened. Jeff was so amazing. What happened?
Or nobody care.
Yeah, that's true. That's fine. Yep. So
Disappear in the jungle. I don't know why that caught me off guard so much. Just,
Okay.
It's quite the opposite of my ending.
yeah, you want Lamborghinis and helicopters and yachts and mansions.
Well, believe it or not, I wasn't even
I'll just
thinking.
disappear in the jungle.
I wasn't thinking of those things. I was thinking about like world hunger and
Sure, sure you were.
changing
Everybody was when they were praying they got to give him $2 billion.
and building a new church for heritage.
Sure.
I really was.
Mm-hmm.
I really was. The angels.
With the first $15 million,
The angel-
and after that, all the rest of it
Well, there's
is yachts and Lamborghinis.
That's definitely true too. But the angels, the angel halo is above my head.
I picked the humble actor, and disappeared in the jungle. There's a big difference between you and me, Chris.
Yeah,
I just realized that.
It's so
Just
funny. So funny, dude.
That's funny.
That was very funny.
That was great. Okay, so anyways, and that was a way better choice, by the way, than
Then what? Zac Efron?
Zac Efron.
I disagree.
Yeah.
I regret nothing.
Yeah. Well, singing and dancing. Dude, so many of the movies that you were talking about with the Zac Efron thing. When you mentioned Baywatch, The Rock was in Baywatch. You could have done The Rock.
There you go again. You can't
I
can't
know.
let it go.
And
we were
what-
ready.
I'm just
we
horrified
were
by
ready
this.
to move on to the
This
Bible.
decision, you said,
We were literally about to say, well, like us on YouTube.
in The
And you're
Greatest
like,
Showman,
you go back to
in The Greatest Showman,
The Rock was there.
well, in The Greatest Showman, you could have had,
Hugh Jackman or
that's right. And you chose,
Wolverine.
okay, anyways.
Manly Man.
Anyways.
How could you choose the opposite?
It just speaks volumes. That's all. That's all I'm saying. We learn a lot
So,
about you.
no.
These segments are it's no wonder our fans love this.
Okay, fine, Jeff. Then I'm going to go on record and say this. The funny thing is, you think that is revealing about me, but actually, it's just revealing about you.
Hmm?
Yeah, you just give me a hard time for my choices. It's not a safe place. This is
not.
not a safe place.
We never claimed it was, Chris. If you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. So welcome to the show. This is the Bible Guy with Jeff.
What? Now I'm excluded from being a Bible guy?
Well, you said that you felt like it wasn't a safe place. I don't want you to be in an unsafe place.
That still doesn't exclude
Okay,
me from being a
Dude,
Bible guy.
Our people are like, you guys are 8 minutes into this thing and haven't got started yet.
It's true.
Yes, so we should get into it. I'm
1
sorry.
Corinthians chapter 8.
This is what happens on Fridays, right? This is what happens.
true.
We get the horsing around and just okay. Here we go. 1 Corinthians chapter 8. Now he's trying to deal with: is it okay to do things, or is it wrong to do certain things? And he really spells it out great for us. So he goes, now regarding your question about food that has been offered to idols, yes, we know that, quote, we all have knowledge about this issue. But while knowledge makes us feel important, it's love that strengthens the church. Anyone who claims to know all the answers doesn't really know very much, but the person who loves God is the one whom God recognizes. So what about eating meat that's been offered to idols? Well, we all know that an idol is not really a god, and that there's really only one God. There may be so-called gods, both in heaven and on earth, and some people actually worship many gods and many lords. But for us, there's one God, the Father, by whom all things were created and for whom we live. And there's one Lord, Jesus Christ, through whom all things were created and through whom we live. However, not all believers know this. Some are accustomed to thinking of idols as being real. So when they eat food that has been offered to idols, they think of it as the worship of real gods, and their weak consciences are violated. It's true that we can't win God's approval by what we eat. We don't lose anything if we don't eat it, and we don't gain anything if we do. But we must be careful so that our freedom does not cause others with a weaker conscience to stumble. For if others see you with your superior knowledge eating in the temple of an idol, won't they be encouraged to violate their conscience by eating food that has been offered to an idol? So because of your superior knowledge, a weak believer for whom Christ died will be destroyed. And when you sin against other believers by encouraging them to do something they believe is wrong, you're sinning against Christ. So if what I eat causes another believer to sin, I will never eat meat again as long as I live, for I don't want to cause another believer to stumble.
Yeah.
So this eating of meat offered to idols is not an issue for us today in our culture, right?
No, not at all.
But the principle makes sense to us. As a matter of fact, it kind of gives us a perfect straw man, because now we're not talking about anybody's preferred behaviors. We're talking about a straw man behavior that none of us have to deal with, eating meat from idols, but it lets us we can put anything in there, right? And work through it that way. He's talking specifically about things God has not said are right or wrong. So to be clear, God has been very, very clear with what is right and what is wrong. But there are some things that God hasn't said one way or the other that people work up traditions about. Should we or shouldn't we do this? And that's what he's talking about here. Yeah, so how do you sort through that?
Well, we got in a big debate about this, and this was the scripture that was sort of talked about when I was in Cuba. Because what's interesting is I don't smoke cigars. I don't think it's a sin or anything like that. That's just goofy. But I do know it's bad for your body.
Yeah.
Right. And
you're not going to go to hell for smoking them. You're just going to smell like you went there.
But right. So I don't smoke cigars. However, because I've been to Cuba 4 times, people who smoke and love cigars know that you can get cigars for a really discounted price when you're over there, like fractions of a penny on the dollar. So anyway, when I go over there, I buy a bunch of cigars, bring them home, and pass them out to people who like them.
And the government now allows that up to like $100 and something Cuban money.
Yeah.
So you're not smuggling cigars.
No, for
you're
sure.
not a cigar smuggler anymore.
Anymore. Yeah. So anyway, the bottom line is while we were there, our interpreter, so this guy, he's like the interpreter guy, he's like the ministry guy on the ground, lives in Cuba. He had a problem with us buying cigars. Mm-hmm. And he told one of our missions team leaders at the church I used to work for, and said, I don't think that you should buy cigars. And she said, why? He said, because here, they're sort of like 30 years behind in terms of culture, right? They really are. They're like, go back into the 1950s where, a piano in a church would be, or drums in a church would be, unheard of, that kind of thing. And so, and sinful maybe even, right? Because it's, drums belong in a band, just all that goofy stuff. So anyway, he says, well, cigars are usually associated with people who are who play cards and drink. And those are the only people in Cuba that smoke cigars. They're worldly people, they're ungodly people. So we don't think you should buy cigars because it looks bad. And so she brought this concern to me. And of course, it is a legitimate concern. So I just said, oh, okay. I said, well, then I think what we should do is find a way to do it in private where nobody can see us. And that way you're sort of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Because we know buying cigars isn't sinful, like we're sinful people, but we don't want to be a stumbling block. So I made an arrangement with one of the other interpreters who had a person in their private home sell cigars. So we could waltz into this guy's home, we could give him the money and walk out, and nobody would be the wiser, and therefore you're avoiding it. And my leader of my trip, that was the big, huge fight that we got in. And she's like, no, we don't want to be a stumbling block. And I'm like, we're not being a stumbling block because we're doing it in private. So we got into this big thing. And it turns out that Paul talks about the person who gets offended, he classifies them as the weaker believer.
Right.
Because the mature believer knows this isn't a sin, right? So, so my theology can get beyond the cultural, poor assumptions, right?
Right.
And so anyway, so there was this big thing. And so when I read this, I think of Cuba.
Right, yeah. So the first question every Christian, if you come up on something of should I or shouldn't I do this, the first question every Christian should ask is, what does the Bible say?
Sure.
That's the first question.
Always.
Does the Bible speak on this? If God says yes, then yes. If God says no, then no. But if God is silent on it, then we have to look at some of the cultural concerns of the Christians we're around. He's not talking about the world here. He's talking about other Christians.
And let me toss something in there too. Sometimes we can. There's a second step, which is God may not say it directly, black and white, but there are godly principles elsewhere.
That's right.
That may not necessarily say thou shalt not tithe on gross or after taxes or whatever it is, right? But there are godly principles that are also given that we can sort of take and build our own conclusions.
Yeah.
And then
you have to be convinced in your own spirit that this is what God is saying, right?
Then you go to godly counsel,
right?
And then you go to culture.
Then you look at culture. For instance, a lot of cultures around the world they allow children to wear shorts, but they, adults would never wear shorts, and they look down on you. You're not a leader. You don't have any influence. But you and I,
unfortunately, in the hottest places,
it's
of
the
the
hottest
world.
places on the planet. So we're showing up and we're wearing, collared shirts and long pants, and it's 115 degrees outside,
Right.
and we're just dying. But that's not a sin one way or the other.
No.
Although their culture would say it's wrong for an adult to wear shorts.
Yes.
So we would go, okay, in that instance, the ministry or the impact is far more important than my personal preferences. So for those who have a rule I don't have and that God doesn't speak about, well, then I choose to lay down my freedoms for the benefit of the one who doesn't feel free in that area. Instead of me imposing on them or telling them that they're being idiots or that they're just being jerks, or me coming and going, I just got to be true to me.
Right.
This is my real self. Instead of me imposing those things on people, I go, okay, you know what? If they struggle with it, I don't have to force them to struggle with it.
Yeah. Some people are more concerned about making a point than making an impact.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the advice here in the Life Application Bible, it says, for stronger believers, don't be proud of your maturity, right? So don't flaunt your freedom. Instead, act in love, which is really the whole core of this thing, right? If you claim that you know everything, you don't really know anything. That's what he says, right? If you've got all the answers, you don't really know what you're talking about. Really, love is what strengthens the church. And then he says, don't cause other believers to stumble. So it's not about imposing your freedom. It's about accepting their limits and saying, okay, I don't need to force it. For weaker Christians, although you may not feel the same freedom in some areas as others, take your time and pray to God, but don't force others to live up to your stipulations. Mm-hmm. So there's a mutual accommodation of the other. And that is when I think really you see this beautiful ability. Right now, for instance, is it a sin to wear a mask in public?
Wow. You're just on fire this week.
Is it?
No, of course.
Is it a sin to not wear a mask in public?
No, of course not.
Okay. So I was just recently at an event in Kathmandu in Nepal.
Yes.
And some of the pastors came into the room and they weren't sure, should I take off my mask? Shouldn't I take it? And it was clear they wanted to wear their masks, right? And one of the other pastors in the room went, oh, you don't have to wear a mask. And the guy he started to pull his mask down and he said, is it okay if I wear my mask? And the guy goes, certainly, brothers, you're free to do whatever you want to do. And the guy pulled his mask back up, sat down, we had a great meeting. So in that situation, the guy came in because the majority of the people weren't wearing masks. This guy came in feeling a little uncomfortable, like maybe I'm kind of being a jerk or something. But he felt unsafe without his mask. Okay, if that was a safety net for him, it's fine. Wear it. So the other preachers said, feel free. You're free to wear one or not wear one, whatever you want to do. And they accommodated him and didn't shame him. And I thought, that's how it's supposed to be.
Right.
That's supposed to be. We should, those who feel free.
I'm glad that's where you went with it. I thought you were going, because you could have gone somewhere else.
Well, I think people are jerks about it on both sides.
Right.
People are jerks. I've heard people yell about it. You should be. I've heard people yell about it. You shouldn't be. So stupid. How about Christians just allow other Christians to do what they want to do? God didn't say one way or the other, right? It's not black and white. If it doesn't say thou shalt not, then you're free, right? Or thou shalt. If it doesn't have a thou shalt or thou shalt not, then you're free to do what you want to do. And at that place, then why do I care? Why did I care that guy wanted to wear a mask? I have some other thing. I've got some political motivation, some fleshly motivation, some arrogance or some pride. And that's what Paul says is causing the problem, is the pride and arrogance. So those who are free, be free, but don't impose your opinions on others. Those who feel limited, go ahead and maintain that standard. Just don't impose it on others. Show love one to another.
Yeah. And it's also, I also liken it to, I told you, I think of Cuba, but I also liken it to sometimes when, what I do for a living mostly, and I've done for, at least 20-something years, is sort of, be a part of, if not mostly in charge of, creating weekend services. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll pick a song, and you pick a song, like for instance, I'll pick a hypothetical, something that doesn't exist, right?
Sure.
But like a Taylor Swift song. So my daughter sang a Taylor Swift song on stage, and it was about.
So that's the hypothetical. It doesn't
Well,
exist.
the hypothetical is the complaint.
Oh, I see.
Because we didn't get a complaint.
I see. Yeah.
So the hypothetical is, so she sang Bad Blood. It was about tension in relationships. So the hypothetical would be like, well, I can't believe you chose a Taylor Swift song because she, and then they complain about something about her lifestyle or something, right?
Sure.
She drinks beer.
Okay.
I can't believe you condone that, And I'm like, well, I don't, I just picked a song that she sang, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where you have to sort of respect, and by the way, the Bible would call that person a weaker believer. Like that doesn't belong in a church service. That's wrong. Well, let me ask you a question. Is it sinful? Well, no. Well, how's it wrong? Well, it may not be wrong. So what you're really saying is you have your own definition of what should or should not exist in a church service. That's really what it is. And by the way, that's respectable. There's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
There's nothing wrong with that. And so you have to sort of walk that line and just say like, okay, but at the same time, that person's classified as a weaker believer. Then what you need to do is you need to say like, okay, I respect what you're saying. Let's talk that out. And we live our lives in such a way to where this actually plays out in so many ways in our lives. You may be the stronger believer because your maturity understands what it is. But you have to do is you have to consider if people think something, sometimes it's not worth it.
Right.
And you have to actually back off and surrender your preferences for the greater good, for the impact, right?
Right.
So it's a fine line.
Yeah. So I think that in this case, he's really challenging us to the idea of love, right? So while knowledge makes us important, it's love that strengthens the church. The note here, love is more important than knowledge. Knowledge can make us look good and feel important, but we can all too easily develop an arrogant, know-it-all attitude. Many people come with strong opinions, are unwilling to listen and to learn from God and others. If you want a vibrant relationship with God, you must get to know him, not just know about him. The way to know him is by understanding and recognizing the depth of his love for all people and the lengths to which he goes to reach us with his love. And then we, in turn, will love him and model that love to others. That's really what it's all about. Instead of imposing our opinions or our beliefs that are outside of the confines of Scripture, instead we make room for others and we live according to our conscience, what we believe God is telling us, while we allow others to do the same. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And so what Paul eventually says is he says, you can't win approval of God by the things you eat or don't eat. We're going to continue to live out our lives, and we don't want to cause another believer to stumble.
Right.
You know what it also reminds me of is Galatians chapter 6, where it sort of brings up this entire, not just making choices in spiritual maturity, but it also brings up the entire idea that we as Christians are actually responsible for the development and the growth of those underneath us or that come behind us.
Yes.
Or that are, maybe...
And the other believers around us.
And the other believers around us,
Yep.
right? And again, we don't have time to unpack that. Just the idea that leave me alone, it's my choice, I can do what I want, don't argue with me. And it's like, well, wait a minute. What do you mean my actions have to consider other people's opinions?
Yeah.
And yet, all throughout the Bible, Paul is saying, no, you need to take into consideration the development of other people's faith as well, based on your choices.
And we submit to one another.
Right.
Yeah. So Paul's going to keep unpacking that as we move into 1 Corinthians 9 next week. So I think that'll be a really great challenge. It's a great place to end.
Yes, it is. So we'll see you next time on The Bible Guys.